a fundamental motivational force that's transcendent, so it's shared by all humans, it's shared by all mammals, let's say, it's shared by reptiles for that matter, like it's archaic. Lust would be that, anger would be that, fear would be that, pain. Those are best conceptualized as personalities. The best way to think about anger is a personality, and you know that perfectly well. If you get very irritated when you're arguing with someone and you're possessed by the spirit of anger, it changes your perceptions, it changes your emotions, it changes your view of the future, your view of the past. It's a fragmentary sub-personality that then takes over the whole. And then you could imagine that a malevolent sub-personality, so for all intents and purposes a demon, is an aggregate of those fundamental sub-personalities that's integrated in a manner that's very, very powerful and that partakes of that motivational force. If we're going to reserve the term God for the highest possible unity, it's definitely not that, but it's certainly it's a transcendent principality, and it is a spirit and a personality.
So the gods in Jungian psychology, the gods and spirits of various ancient civilizations, God and the angels and demons from the Christian Middle Ages, and so on and so forth. Are these all just archaic ideas sprouting from the primitive imaginations of our well-meaning but ignorant ancestors? Or did they understand deep psychological and philosophical truths that we've lost today? In this conversation with Jordan Peterson, Jonathan Pageau, and the Knights of the Round Table of Theology and Philosophy here, we stumble into the beautifully complex and intriguing world of the gods. Let's jump right into it.
Well, the angels are named gods in the Bible by the text.
Principalities and powers of Paul.
No, but even the word, the word for the gods.
People believe in those things. They do today. Reason.
No, but the angels that God sends are called gods.
By whom?
I mean, the angels that are in God's service are used. Sometimes they use the same word.
I don't know that that's so in the Hebrew Bible. They're not called gods.
It doesn't make as much sense of the universe if there are many gods.
Right.
You know, in Aristotle and Plato, they're not many gods.
So here we're seeing two objections, more from a theological and philosophical perspective than anything. In the first case, Pageau is right. The Hebrew Bible does call the angels gods in multiple places, and the second objection will be resolved throughout the rest of this video, mainly from a psychological standpoint, although there's plenty of great takeaways for those of you with more of a theological bent as well. But before we get to that, let's bring Jung into the conversation. What would he have said about the world of gods, spirits, angels, and demons? Jung wrote in Psychology and the Occult, spirits can be seen as autonomous complexes which manifest themselves in our psyche as the result of unconscious processes. He also said, in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, the gods are personifications of unconscious contents, and these contents have a numinous quality, i.e., they have a compelling or fascinating power. This peculiar quality cannot be explained psychologically, but it can be experienced empirically. Gods and religions are expressions of these primordial images, which have a life of their own in the human psyche, and exercise a powerful influence on human consciousness. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Right?
I guess, well, then we're faced with the thorny problem under those circumstances is of how we conceptualize transcendent spirits that aren't reflective of the ultimate unity. So what do I mean by that? Well, we could take, this is an oversimplification, but we could take a god like Ares, god of war, saying I'll do a biological reading of that. You can be ruled by anger. And you might say, well, yeah, but that's not a god. And I say, well, yeah, let's just hold on about that. First of all, it's not only localized in you, it's everywhere. Like the rage in your heart is the same as the rage in your heart and in your heart and in mine. It's maybe the same, or it's a variant on a theme, and it's the same force that could rage in an animal. It's tens of millions of years old. It's a pattern of neurological activation, you might say embodied activation, that's transcendent and immortal, and it can certainly rule you. And it has an ambivalent relationship to something that's transcendent, non-biological, because it fleshes out part of the implicate order. And so, like, is rage a god? Is lust a god? is fear of God. And I mean, those have they have been deified in many cultures. You certainly have gods of Eros in all sorts of cultures, because that fundamental motivational force, which is a spirit that abides within, but that's also transcendent.
Are they God in the biblical sense? I would say.
Well,
They would be idols.
No.
Well,
but then no.
yes and no, because they also have a reality,
They're
right?
higher than us.
Yes.
In the Old in the book of Daniel,
it becomes semantics. Like it's semantics.
I think we are at
I think we're at semantics here.
No.
So you believe that there are principalities that act upon us that are beyond human scale, but you don't like that we call them gods, let's say.
Semantics. So this is a problem, because we simply do not have the language to talk about things like this without sounding insane to most modern-minded people. And that's clearly not because these gods and spirits, or autonomous complexes and personifications of unconscious contents, as Jung would say, aren't real. The way language will evolve over time to integrate these things into our vocabulary and everyday life is something I'm looking forward to watching, but I really have no idea how it'll play out. But moving on. One thing that's going to be very helpful to understand before we continue is microcosm versus macrocosm. Based on past conversations between Jonathan Pageau and Jordan Peterson, these autonomous partial personalities, humans have always called angels or gods, demons, spirits, all exist in their various forms both within the mind and outside of the mind of the individual. So within you, you have anger, deceit, compassion, truth, fear, courage, etc. Or you can conceptualize them as the various archetypes as well, like the shadow, anima, animus, trickster, the hero, etc., right? The shadow corresponding with anger, deceit, fear, for example, or the anima corresponding with compassion, the trickster corresponding with deceit, the hero with courage. Now, outside of the mind of the individual as larger collective personalities, people from the dawn of time have called spirits, angels, demons, etc. These would still be within the collective unconscious from a Jungian perspective, and Pageau and Peterson both believe these autonomous personalities transcend and are greater than humanity in some sense, and exert a great deal of influence over people, just as the gods and goddesses of Egypt and Greece did, for example, or the archetypes in Jungian psychology, or the spirits in even modern Christianity in many denominations, like the spirit of truth or love, or the spirit of wisdom, for example, Sophia. All right, back to the clip.
Whether we call them gods or not, they have a proclivity to act like deities.
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
That's the biblical view of idols, though.
Yes, yes. Yes, well,
powers in which we're making our...
But it's deeper than that in some sense, because you could think of an idol as just an arbitrary human construction. But what I would say instead, it's not. It's the raising of a principality to the highest place. Well, here's a way of conceptualizing it. Well, let's do this biologically again. So we could take something like anger or lust, and you might, like psychologists tend to conceptualize those as drives or reflexes or instincts. It's a poor conceptualization. And here's why, and I mean this scientifically. A fundamental motivational force that's transcendent, so it's shared by all humans, it's shared by all mammals, let's say, it's shared by reptiles for that matter, like it's archaic. Lust would be that, anger would be that, fear would be that, pain. Those are best conceptualized as personalities. And why do I say that? It's because they have a viewpoint, they have a telos, they frame emotion.